Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In the small town of Maplewood, nestled in the green hills of New England, tranquility was woven into the very fabric of daily life. It was a place where everyone knew their neighbors, where children played freely in the streets, and where whispers of crime seemed as distant as the mountains that framed the horizon. Yet, beneath the calm veneer, darkness lurked, waiting for the right moment to strike. On a crisp autumn morning, the sun blinked through a curtain of golden leaves, casting a mosaic of shadows on Maplewood's historic main street. The local cafe buzzed with morning chatter, the scent of freshly brewed coffee hanging in the air. But within this idyllic setting, a storm was brewing. It had begun with a missing person report. 18-year-old Sarah Whitmore had vanished without a trace, leaving her family and friends in a state of anguish and confusion. Sarah was the kind of girl who lit up a room bright-eyed, adventurous, and known for her infectious laugh. A cheerleader with aspirations of attending college, she was the heart of her circle, and her sudden absence sent shockwaves through the community. The police launched an investigation, canvassing the area for clues while a search operation gathered volunteers who roamed the woods and nearby rivers, desperately hoping for a shred of hope. As the sun sank lower in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets, the people of Maplewood clung to a fragile hope, unaware that the darkness would soon unveil a mystery that would engulf their lives, revealing that sometimes even the most peaceful places harbored secrets unmet in the daylight. The victim. Sarah Whitmore was more than just a name on a missing persons report. She was a vibrant spirit, entangled in the everyday life of Maplewood. Raised in a close-knit family, Sarah was the youngest of 3 children, adored by her brothers and cherished by her parents, who worked hard to provide her with every opportunity. From a young age, Sarah demonstrated a passion for the arts, her sketches frequently decorating the family fridge. Friends recounted how she could find beauty in the mundane, turning an ordinary afternoon into an unforgettable map. As a senior at Maplewood High, she was known for her enthusiasm, both in academics and extracurricular activities. She led the cheer squad, her spirited junks and energizing chants fueling her team's morale. Beyond her accomplishments, however, was a girl struggling with the weight of impending adulthood. The pressure to excel in school and the uncertainty of college loomed over her like a storm cloud, a contrast to the brightness she usually radiated. Friends described her as someone who wore her heart on her sleeve, always ready to lend an ear or shoulder to lean up. Yet, whispers of struggle echoed through the halls of breakup and left her inwardly questioning and pressured to navigate friendships that felt increasingly fragile. She had confided in a few close friends about feeling isolated, her laugh sometimes masking the turmoil beneath. On the day she disappeared, Sarah had told her mother she was going for a walk to clear her head. It was a rite she often took, preceding her moments of inspiration in her art. Curious and concerned, her mother had asked where she intended to go, but Sarah's response was vague, hinting at a personal need for solitude. But as the hours ticked by without a word, the gnawing sense of dread began to creep into the Whitmore household, setting in motion discoveries that would change the fabric of Maplewood forever. The crime scene. The search for Sarah Whitmore transformed into an organized hunt, with police officers and volunteers scouring the local parks and wooded areas she often frequented. On the third day after her disappearance, a small group of volunteers ventured deeper into Maplewood's outskirts, where the boundaries between town and forest blurred. It was there, in the dappled light beneath the canopy of trees, that they stumbled upon a chilling sight. Near a heavily wooded trail obscured by thick underbrush lay a backpack recognizable by its vibrant teal color, and adorned with patches sewn on from various school activities. Panic surged through the group as they cautiously approached, their hearts racing. Unzipping the bag revealed its contents: Sarah's journal, a half-eaten granola bar, and her cherished sketchbook with soft pencil marks depicting scenes from her life in Maple. The joyful illustrations felt dissonant against the backdrop of uncertainty and fear, wrapping the area like a shroud. As news of the discovery reached local law enforcement, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The scene was cordoned off, and investigators began to meticulously comb the area, looking for anything that might lead them to Sarah, or an understanding of what had transpired. Discarded snack wrappers, small twigs disturbed in the underbrush, and faint impressions in the mud were all examined under the scrutinizing gaze of seasoned detectives, every detail diminishing the glimmer of hope in their hearts. As the sun waned, casting an ominous glow through the trees, the investigators uncovered additional evidence: a thin trail leading deeper into the woods where the underbrush thickened. It indicated the potential for a struggle, an unspoken reminder that the serene landscape could harbor danger. This knowledge darkened the air, and the search shifted from hopeful rescue to a grim investigation. In that moment, the picturesque town of Maplewood lost a piece of its innocence, leaving behind only shadows of doubt and fear as the chilling reality set in. Sarah was truly missing, and there were dark forces at play. The early investigation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Maplewood in twilight, the atmosphere in the police precinct grew tense. Detectives gathered in the cramped conference room, whiteboards covered with photographs of Sarah and notes filled with potential leads, from recent sightings to witness accounts. It was a race against time, and the stakes climbed higher with each passing hour. Lead Detective Claire Matthews, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous attention to detail, stood at the forefront of the investigation. "We need to prioritize interviews with anyone who might have seen Sarah in the hours leading up to her disappearance," she instructed the team, her voice steady, revealing little of the turmoil swirling within her. Outside the precinct, parents, friends, and concerned neighbors crowded, their faces etched with worry as updates trickled in. Detective Matthews and her partner, Officer David Grant, began by interviewing friends at the high school. The students, clinging to the hope that their spirited classmate might return, shared fragmented stories. Melinda, one of Sarah's closest friends, could barely hold back her tears. She was acting different. I thought it was stress about college, but she seemed so lost, she whispered, her voice trembling. Others echoed similar sentiments, sketching a profile of a girl in a fragile emotional state. But none had seen her since she left home. Next, they turned to the potential pairs of eyes within the community, canvassing nearby shops and local parks. The cafe where Sarah loved to study proved particularly pivotal. The barista recalled seeing her on the morning of her disappearance, sitting alone at her favorite table, sketching in her book. She had left abruptly, her face a mixture of determination and unease, exchanging hurried words with the boy they now sought to identify. The barista's brows knitted in concern as she recounted the details, a feeling gnawing at her gut. With leads beginning to surface and the pool of witnesses expanding, the investigation took on new momentum. However, Detective Matthews couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Dark thoughts crept into her mind. Could they uncover the truth behind Sarah's disappearance before it was too late? As the moon rose over Maplewood, it brought with it an uneasy stillness, a reminder that the investigation had only just begun, and the secrets hidden in the shadows of the town awaited revelation. The dead ends. As days turned into nights, the urgency of the investigation waded through a sea of frustrations. Detective Claire Matthews and Officer David Grant found themselves engaged in conversations that often ended in silent conversations that hinted at nothing more than the hollow echo of uncertainty. The tips flooded in, ranging from credible sightings to wild accusations, all leading nowhere. Each dead end was a weight that pressed heavily on their shoulders. One such avenue led them toward a tip about a man who was rumored to be seen at a nearby bus stop the day Sarah disappeared. His name was Todd Mitchell, the known transient with a criminal history for petty theft. When Matthews and Grant approached him, he revealed a rough exterior, stained hands and hollow eyes reflecting a life on the road. "I don't know this girl," he sneered, but after a few pointed questions, he defended himself, claiming that he had seen only a handful of kids passing by. They left unfulfilled, the leads evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Another promising lead pointed to a former boyfriend, a troubled teen named Jake Harlow. While initially apprehensive during the interview, Jake's alibi checked out. He had been out of town during Sarah's disappearance. His emotional turmoil, however, was evident. "I loved her, and she was struggling. But I would never hurt her," he insisted, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes. Matthews felt a pain of sympathy, but was aware that emotions could weave intricate webs of deception. With the community's anxiety escalating, pressure from local media intensified. The appealing narratives of hope that had surged in the initial days waned into a grim silence. Matthews reviewed the evidence gathered so far: Sarah's belongings, witness statements, and surveillance recordings from around town. The pieces of the puzzle seemed scattered, hopelessly distant. Each unproductive interview chipped away at her resolve, leaving a sense of futility hanging in the air. As night fell once more over Maplewood, shadows crept around its cornerstone, gripping the tight-knit community. A lingering dread that soon transformed into despair. Would Sarah's case slip from memory, buried beneath the weight of unanswered questions? Or could the diligent efforts of the investigators uncover the truth, lost in the spaces between impossibilities? A break in the case. Just as the investigation seemed to drift into a chasm of despair, an unexpected breakthrough materialized on the morning of the 6th day. Detective Claire Matthews was poring over notes from the previous interviews when a call burst through the precinct, sharp and demanding, breaking the monotony of silence that had settled in. It was Officer Jake Fisher, a new addition to the force. Informal, yet zealous. Reporting from a secluded area in the woods, near where Sarah's backpack was found. "Detective Matthews, you need to get down here. We've found something." His voice crackled with urgency over the radio. A mixture of dread and hope coursed through her veins as she hurried out of the precinct, the cool autumn air stinging her face mirroring the anxious pounding of your heart. Arriving at the scene, Matthews was greeted by a grim tableau that turned his stomach. Two officers standing by a cluster of trees, fingers pointing to a nearby thicket. There, half buried in leaves and dirt, was a blue scarf, grimy, but undeniably familiar. The fabric distinct and familiar. It was one Sarah often wore. "We found it a couple of meters from the backpack," Officer Fisher explained, watching Matthew's reaction carefully. "It was tossed aside, but it's clear it wasn't just left here by accident." As forensics arrived to collect the scarf as evidence, a tidal wave of adrenaline surged through the team. Hours spent chasing shadows began to feel worthwhile. The first tangible lead in days had emerged like a glimmer of light piercing dark cloud. Matthews swiftly directed her team to expand the search radius, urging them to examine the surrounding area more closely. While they combed the nearby grounds, another officer caught her attention from a distance, crouching beside something protruding from the forest floor. As she approached, he revealed another clue, a small silver bracelet, engraved with initials. SW. The discovery confirmed what they had dreaded, but anticipated. The air thickened with a sense of urgency, stifled hope, and a renewed commitment to finding Sarah. As her heart pounded, Matthews marveled at the intertwining of suspense and dread. They were edging closer to uncovering the truth, yet every unfolding detail held the potential for tragedy. In that moment, the resilient spirit of Maplewood felt tethered by the fragile thread of a community desperate for answers. And while darkness loomed overhead, with each clue unearthed, a flicker of determination ignited within their hearts. Finding Sarah soon might mean unearthing secrets that could rattle their world forever. The suspect, the discovery of Sarah's scarf and bracelet, rippled through the investigative team, awakening a sense of urgency that had been dormant in the aftermath of initial interview. Detective Claire Matthews felt the weight of the recent findings bearing down on her, propelling her to refocus her efforts. All eyes turned to the enigmatic figures who flitted in and out of Sarah's life as they sought to connect the dots, weaving their way toward the truth. Amidst the mounting evidence, a name began to emerge: the boy Sarah had been seen arguing with on the morning of her disappearance. Kyle Langston, a classmate regarded as a loner. Matthews had dismissed him at first, but now, with the pieces slowly falling into place, she couldn't shake the feeling that he might hold a pivotal key to understanding what had happened. Kyle had exhibited erratic behavior since they had crossed paths, often found drawing alone in the park, and his fixation on Sarah had become a point of fascination for some of their peers. During one interview, the fellow student noted that Kyle was often seen lingering outside the cafe, where Sarah would study. "I don't think she ever noticed him, but he was always there," she recalled, her brows furrowing in concern. With renewed focus, Matthews and Officer Grant sought out Kyle at his home, a modest one-story residence set apart from the bustling part of town. As they approached, they noticed the worn-out bicycle on the lawn, rusting under the fall foliage, symbolic of a once active teenager now lost in seclusion. When he opened the door, Kyle's demeanor was noticeably tense, jumping at shadows and fumbling over his words as they introduced themselves. I don't know anything about Sarah," he stammered, eyes starting to the ground, a nervous twitch betraying his apparent innocence. Matthews could feel the rush of adrenaline as they laid out the series of connections: she's presence at the cafe that day, the struggle for attention from someone who had never quite noticed him in their social circle. Once again, Feelings of sympathy battled against the growing apprehension. As they pressed him for details, Kyle's responses became increasingly fragmented, riddled with hesitation. A flicker of defensiveness ignited, and for a moment, Matthews caught a glimpse of long-buried frustration, manifested in words delivered with an offense only an outsider could ignite. "Sarah didn't like me, that's all. She didn't care," he finally blurted out, words tumbling from his lips in a ragged exhale. Underneath the defensive facade lay deeper emotions, and Matthews observed with a growing sense of unease. In Kyle's fragile outbursts, she sensed both pain and rage, a toxic mix that could easily erupt when provoked. As they left the Langston residence, a burdening sense of doubt settled in. Had they found a suspect? Or was he merely a misunderstood boy grappling with rejection? As the weight of uncertainty hung thick in the air, Matthews knew the investigation was at a pivotal juncture, one that could redefine their understanding of Sarah's fate. The simple contours of adolescence could hide a darkness that, once set free, would alter the perfect facade of Maplewood forever. The trial. Months had passed since Sarah Whitmore vanished into the quiet depths of Maplewood, but the scent of anticipation still hung thick in the air as the day of reckoning arrived. The courtroom was brimming with townsfolk, concerned family, and news reporters eager to capture every moment of what had become the most discussed case in recent memory. The atmosphere was heavy, with a convergence of hope and dread, hearts beating as one in solidarity for a girl who might never return. Kyle Langston stood defiant in the defendant's chair, a stark contrast to the frail picture of the boy they once knew. Now 18, he appeared hardened by the ordeal, his shoulders tense and his expression cast in shadows. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, presenting the evidence collected, a timeline of Sarah's last known interactions, the discovery of her belongings in the woods, and the unraveling narrative that pointed to nearing danger as they introduced witness testimonies. Each recounting felt like a fresh wound. Sarah's family remained stoic, but anguish trickled into their expressions, evident with every mention of their beloved daughter. The testimony came from Melinda, Sarah's best friend, who was still grappling with the aftermath of losing her confidant. She had mentioned Kyle to me before. She felt uncomfortable around him. Melinda recounted, her voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and anger. The prosecution painted Kyle as an unstable individual, harboring a painful obsession that could lead to horrifying consequences, as the defense countered, portraying Kyle as a scapegoat embodiment of a troubled mind, mischaracterized by societite courtroom, quaked from the weight of their opposing narratives. By now, Kyle was a pawn in a much larger game, and Matthews could see the anxiety etched into his features as he sat through testimonies that twisted every sentiment he had ever known. The turning point came when a forensic expert took the stand, presenting evidence that Kyle's DNA was found mingled with the scarf that had unearthed the trail leading to the woods. Gasps permeated the audience as this revelation struck like a jolt of electricity. Tension thickened in the air, turning the courtroom into a battleground of reason and emotion. As the trial limped toward its conclusion, the weight of the decision rested heavily with the jury. Matthews, seated among the onlookers, felt a sinking sense of the inevitability surrounding the verdict. They had been entangled in the courtroom's suffocating grasp for what felt like an eternity, each moment echoing the unresolved mystery of Sarah's fate. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jurors emerged, solemn expressions framing their faces. When the foreman announced their verdict, guilty of aggravated assault, but not guilty of murder, the courtroom erupted into chaos. A heart-wrenching blend of relief and rage swept over the family as they grappled with a reality that both acknowledged the crime but spared the life at the center of their torment. As the gavel struck, sealing the case within the confines of legal judgment, Matthews understood that Sarah's story would linger long after the courtroom faded into silence. The shadows of secrets would remain interwoven within the community, a reminder that healing might still be a distant hope. And just as the weight of the verdict anchored some souls, for others, the pages of a haunting narrative would never truly close, leaving a lingering uncertainty that Maplewood would carry into its future. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, the small town of Maplewood grappled with the rippling effects of the verdict. Sarah Whitmore's story had sown itself into the very heart of the community, prompting a whirlwind of emotions: rage, sorrow, and an agonizing sense of loss that dug deep. The once vibrant streets echoed an unsettling quiet, a stark contrast to the laughter and camaraderie that had long defined the town. Sarah's family was left to pick up the pieces, struggling to navigate their grief through the hollow remnants of their daughter's absence. Visits to her favorite cafe now felt like a ghostly pilgrimage, the lingering aroma of coffee mingling with bittersweet memories. Each day was marked by reminders of her laughter and dreams that would never flourish. The Whitmores became a symbol of resilience, yet the fractures ran deep, threatening to unravel connections that once held them together. Meanwhile, Kyle Langston had been sentenced to a term in a juvenile detention center for his role in Sarah's assault. The decision echoed through the town, igniting divisive discussions. A segment of the community felt justice had been served, while others expressed outrage, arguing that the verdict had failed to confront the true intentions behind the unfathomable action. The lingering question whether necessary reforms could emerge from failure twisted through conversations, igniting debates about mental health and societal responsibility. Detective Matthews, her mind burdened with the weight of endless what-ifs, found herself re-examining the evidence that had surfaced throughout the investigation. Late nights in her dimly lit office brought forth sleepless reflection. Flashes of the case replayed like a film strip, each scene shrouded in uncertainty. Could they have approached it different? Were there signs they had missed which might have altered the trajectory of the case? Days turned into weeks, but there was no escaping the haunting emptiness within Maplewood. The townsfolk began to gather for community meetings, driven by the desire to become advocates for prevention and support. What emerged was a movement, a call for open conversations about mental wellness and vulnerabilities prevalent among the youth within their small community. With a unified purpose, residents aimed to forge a safer, more loving environment, far removed from the shadows of suspicion that now loomed. Yet, as Matthews attended the meetings, the tightening knot in his stomach persisted. While recognizing a need for change was commendable, she knew that real healing would take time, a gradual process that required the effort and sincerity of the entire town. As the crisp winter air approached, the holidays bore down on Maplewood, a time typically marked by joy now transformed into a somber reflection of loss. Families would gather with empty chairs, all coping alongside the untouched presence of Sarah, whose story remained interwoven with their lives. The photographs on the mantel became conduits of remembrance, reminding all of what could have been. Yet amidst the pain, there was a fragile thread of hope. a commitment to use the memories of the past as a foundation for the future. Sarah had ignited a dialogue that would ignite change's spark from which the community could slowly rot. And while time would never erase the wounds, perhaps together, folks of Maplewood could forge pathways toward healing. The unfolding story was still in its early chapters, and as the whispers of the past intermingled with hopes for tomorrow, it became evident that together they could embrace the heavy burden of truth in a town irrevocably transformed by the shadows of loss. Reflection. As the winter snow blanketed Maplewood, its crystalline layer offered an uneasy tranquility, contrasting sharply with the tumult underlying the surface. In the wake of Sarah Whitmore's tragic story, the town found itself indelibly altered. In quiet moments as pine trees glistened under the weight of the evening frost, residents gathered together, leaning into the warmth of community and shared grief. Detective Claire Matthews often took solitary walks along the old trail, where it had all begun, using the familiar path to guide her thoughts. The trees whispered secrets only she could understand, retracing steps through memories that laced with guilt and questions. What had she missed? What signs had gone unnoticed? The weight of every name and face she'd encountered during the investigation bore down on her, enriching her resolve to glean understanding from the loss of fire ignited within her to uphold Sarah's legacy. Conversations at community meetings took on new depth as parents opened their hearts to discussions of love, struggle, and mental health, all drawn from the collective sorrow at Bob. In this spirit of unity, friendships emerged and old grievances molded into supportive ties. A generation that could have easily fallen into apathy now stood united, promising to elevate compassion to a foremost approach in their children's future.